Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of MERP character creation. My name is John, and this screen that you're looking at right now is one of my intro screens for my gaming page in Roll20.net. We'll be using this page for stat rolling and whatever other rolls we need to do. But before we get into stat rolling, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time with this because I could talk about it for half an hour, believe me, I could. But there are different schools of thought on stat rolling. The MERP system actually only has one option for rolling your stats, and that is to roll 6d100 and re-roll for anything under a 20, but roll until you have 6 stats that are above 19. That's the only option that it gives you. Not to say that you can't come up with other options, because the rule book will tell you it is simply a book of guidelines, and that each game master should tailor his own game or tailor the rules to suit his own game and his own campaign. If, for example, you took a look at a second edition copy of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player Handbook, you will notice in there that there's like 5 or 6 different options for rolling stats. I've seen other gaming systems that give you different options for rolling up your primary stats or attributes. And the idea behind that is to give the GM or DM or MM a chance to allow the players to roll something with more favorable stats. There are some game masters that will not do it any differently in various systems. They just want to make it nice and easy, and if you roll a lousy character, you're stuck with the lousy character. Well, that's no fun. And maybe there are people out there that don't mind playing crap characters. I'm not one of them. I don't want somebody in my campaigns playing a crap character because they won't have any fun. So I prefer to allow people a chance to have better stats. Because of the way that I think, I am almost certain to get a few dislikes on this video, and I can accept that. I accept that people disagree with my line of thinking. I believe the majority of people think the way that I do, and believe that in real life, throughout history, heroic deeds have been done by heroic beings, and those heroic beings did not have average or below average stats. They had above average and far above average attributes, stats, characteristics, whatever you want to say. Higher strength, higher intelligence, higher charisma, higher agility. Those are the people that become the heroes in real life. And therefore, when you're playing a fictional game, a fantasy role-playing game, I don't see a problem with allowing people the opportunity to roll better than a 6d100, just re-roll for anything under a 20. Anyone who has watched my video from 2017 might possibly recall, and I could be wrong. I haven't watched that video in a long time. I never really watched the whole video. I was there for a while. I was trying to do some, you put the little comments in where I maybe made a mistake or did something stupid. I got about halfway through and I gave up because I can only take so much of me, and then I got to walk away. So anyway, you may recall, I believe I used a stat roller, something to the effect of rolling 18d100 and possibly re-rolling for anything under 60 and then keeping the best 6. So that would have yielded pretty favorable results for everyone. And even some of those people that rolled those stats that way, some of the characters we created last year weren't that great. And I believe I probably mentioned in my last video, and I may get dislikes for that one too. In my opinion, there is no such thing as an OP character, player character in MERP. There are OP. I mean, there are OP beings in MERP, but obviously they're not too OP, or they wouldn't have been destroyed in the books. But again, it's all fiction and fantasy. I certainly wouldn't want to come up against a Balrog or a Nazgul. In my mind, that would be pretty damn OP. But anyway, What I'm trying to say is, lately I have been having people that are coming to me and creating characters. I have been having them roll straight by the book. One roll, unless they roll under a 300, um, then I would give them a re-roll. But if they roll a 300 or a 301, they were stuck with it. I don't think that's fair, and I really, really hate that I've been doing it that way for the last couple of weeks. Um, so from now on, I want to do a different rolling system. And for the purpose of this video, I'm going to do I'm just going to stat roll by the book, but I'll be coming up with something that I want to use for people, maybe something along the lines of roll 60, 100, and remove anything under 60. There are a lot of different ways that a lot of different game masters do it. There's even a point buy system that you can use. In fact, I was playing with a group of fellas last year, and they came up with we all can kind of worked on it together and came up with a point buy system where it's a little bit like if you played Fallout and you have a certain number of points that you're allowed to add to your attributes. You can take some up, some down. It's kind of along that line where you assign your own points. Um, and I have to kind of work on what I really want to do with that. Um, I will say this, if you did use the point buy system, you would not be able to take advantage of something that's called the prime stat rule. And we will get into the prime stat rule in a little bit. But I just want to say that there are better ways to roll the dice than what the book has you roll. And I will be allowing players to roll something better than what they've been rolling lately. And I don't know if it's going to be, rolling 60, 100 minus 60, or rolling a stat roll by the book and maybe doing it 3 or 4 times and picking the best set. Um, One idea that I have right now is to, instead of giving you a mulligan at 300, give you a mulligan at 400. So anything under 400, you will re-roll again, and probably maybe say give you 3 rolls. Um, yeah, 3 rolls where you have to like at least get 3 rolls that are 400 or above, and then pick the best one of those. So I'll just kind of do something like that. I'm just kind of testing the waters here in this video, but I'm going to do something like that. I'm going to roll the dice. Anything under a 400, I'm going to just disregard completely. And when I get 3 rolls that are over 400, I'll just pick which set that we want to keep out of that. Um, so let's just roll really quick. There's one. That's a 407. It's not fantastic, but it's not hideous. There's a 476. That's probably better. Sometimes just because the number's higher doesn't mean that the stats are going to be better. But we'll just do one more roll over 400 if I can get another one. It may not happen for a while. Another idea, there we go, 406. So we'll probably just to keep things simple, I will probably just go with the 476. And again, they're actually decent rolls doing it that way. But you can see that one, I mean, well, obviously it was the second roll that I rolled that yielded that 476, but I have done multiple rolls in here. You could scroll all the way back through the history of the chat log here, and you'll see that I'm rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. I've been doing various you know testings, um, and it's a lot of times you're going to roll and roll and roll, and you're going to get in the 200s and 300s over and over and over again. So this is probably the way I'm going to want to do it when people come to me to create stats for my campaign. If we're creating stats for another game master, then I may do something more along the lines of rolling 3 times and picking the best set, um, but definitely eliminating anything under a 200, something along that lines. Because there are other game masters. There are a few game masters that would prefer that you don't come into a game with favorable stats. But for my campaigns, we'll be rolling something like this. And those are good numbers. I did kind of want to mention like a comparison, kind of along the lines I was talking about heroic beings and having better stats, I want to give you a small list of beings from the Lord of the Rings and tell you what their stats are. And I'll tell you the stats in order: strength, agility, constitution, intelligence, intuition, and presence. And these are pretty little people, okay, that you wouldn't look at and think they would have these great stats, but they do. And they are Bilbo, Frodo, Merry, Pippin, and Sam. Bilbo has 80, 96, 90, 95, 99, and 90. Frodo, 86, 98, 100, 90, 100, and 83. And for anyone that wants to check the MERP module or the MERP book, Lords of Middle Earth, you can find it in the Hobbits and Dwarves and Ents um, um, volume. You will see under Frodo that it actually says a 10 for his constitution. That is actually a misprint. It's supposed to be a 100. And you can look above it where the Rollmaster stats are, and it says 100 for Rollmaster. And anyone that knows anything about this game will tell you there's no way on God's green earth that Frodo had a 10 for constitution. Merry is a 99, 101, 97, 94, 92, and 90. Pippin is a 102, 100, 99, 70, 78, and 97. Sam is the worst one. And a lot of people would argue that Sam was the real hero in The Lord of the Rings. But Sam had a 65, 96, 90, 90, 88, and 60. Even those numbers I would take over just rolling one time stat roll by the book. Not to say that you couldn't get lucky. I actually saw a girl a couple weeks ago get very lucky. She came in, she rolled one set of dice, and they were so good that I actually thought she hit the wrong macro. I thought she hit my old macro where you roll 18 dice and keep the best six. She rolled phenomenally. But we're going to keep these rolls here. And 96, 90. Oh, I got to find a place to write these. Let's go right here. 96, 95, 79, 78, 76, and 53. Believe me when I say these are not fantastic results, but they are way better than, for example, the 225 that I rolled last night, which would compare to a D&D character with straight sixes and sevens across the board. Anyone that's familiar with D&D would tell you they probably would not want to play a character that had straight sixes and sevens. Would not be very successful, I'm sure. All right, we're going to really quick roll for appearance, and your appearance roll is just a straight D100, and that is you get what you get. Oops, where are we at? Down here. Okay, 11. So it could be reasonably ugly. But I'm going to show you a few things. First of all, let's go over here to the rule book, and we're going to pop down here, and we're going to go over a couple of things. Number one, keep in mind while you're assigning your stats, we have something called what I call the prime stat rule, which allows you to replace your lowest roll. Typically, you would want to replace your low roll with a 90 and put that into your prime stat. If you're looking at your professions, each profession will tell you what your prime stat is. For example, the prime stat for a warrior is strength. For a scout, it's agility. Constitution for a ranger. I'm just kind of going to mention 6 basic professions and not the 11 optionals. Intelligence for a mage, intuition for an animist, and presence for a bard. So what this means is you can take your lowest roll and exchange it for a 90 and put it into your prime stat. Also keep in mind that if you want to play an elf, elves must assign a certain stat to their presence. For the Noldo elf, it's the highest stat. For the Cinda, it is one of the 2 highest, which typically you would probably pick your second highest. And for the Sylvan Elf, it is one of the 3 highest. And again, you would probably pick your 3rd highest. So that gets a little tricky if you're creating a bard because the bard's prime stat is presence. So because the elf has to put a certain stat into presence, that can actually mess you up from being able to take advantage of the prime stat rule. As I mentioned earlier, if you do a stat roll by point buy system, you will not be able to take advantage of this prime stat rule. There is another rule over here where it allows you to exchange your appearance roll for one of your other rolls as long as your appearance improves. I actually allow you to do that before you assign your stats. So if you wanted to, you could take your 11 and exchange it, for example, with the 53, which is what we would do. Let me bring up the character sheet. Come on. And we'll just put the 53 right away into the appearance, which means we would scrap the 53, we put it into appearance, scrap the 11 and make that a 90, and it has to go into our prime stat. Well, actually, hold on. Before we do this, let me keep the 53 for a minute and keep the 11 in appearance, because I want to show you how this works if you're going to play a bard. I'll create a bard just for the purpose of this video and explaining how this works. Let's make this a bard. All right. So the bard's prime stat is presence. If we wanted to make a nolder elf, all right, a noldo is singular. If we wanted this guy to be a noldo, we can't take advantage of the prime stat rule because you have a 96 and a 95. So the 96 would have to go in here, and you would not be able to use your prime stat rule. So you couldn't really exchange the 11 and make your appearance any better because you wouldn't have a stat roll, you wouldn't have a stat value under a 20 because of the stat rolling system. So that if as a nolder elf, you would not be able to take advantage of the prime stat rule. And the same goes with the Sindar. If you wanted to be a Cinda elf, you have a 96 and a 95, you would probably end up putting your 95 in there. All right, so you would be stuck with that 11 as an appearance, which would be kind of crappy for an elf. But if you wanted to be a Sylvan elf, for example, you could actually do that because, let's say we put, and that's what we'll do. We'll do a Sylvan elf. We'll put the 53 over here as though you traded the 11 and the 53. You take the 11 and make that a 90 and put it in the prime stat, okay? And then you take your other 2 high rolls. Say I put the 96 in agility, and I would probably go with 95 in intuition. Those are your 3 highest stats. So one of your 3 highest stats did get assigned to presence. So you could actually, by being a Sylvan elf, you could actually take advantage of the prime stat rule. But again, if you wanted to be a Noldo, this has to go in here. If you want to be a Sindar, one of these 2 has to go in here. So you wouldn't be able to take advantage of the prime stat rule. Your stat values would look a whole lot worse, and your appearance would be a whole lot worse if you wanted to play a Nolder elf bard. Now, if you didn't have a 96 and a 95, that would change. Like if all of your rolls were, say, in the 80s and the 70s or wherever, it's early and I'm yawning already, then you would be able to take advantage of the prime stat rule for a Noldo or a Cinda, as long as your highest roll or your highest stat is in presence. Or for a Cinda, it would be your one of your 2 highest stats, typically your 2nd highest. It's a little tricky if anybody ever wants to make an Elven Bard and needs help. I will definitely help you. It's really not that complicated, but it's, there's a little twist in the rules there with the elves, with the prime stat, and with the appearance. Um, that little twist with the appearance swapping out before you assign your stats. That's my own personal little twist on that rule. I allow it. It's not necessarily exactly by the book, but I do allow you to make that switch before you assign your stats if you would like to. And I will tell you once again, the only way you can swap an appearance roll with one of your other stats is if the appearance improves. Okay, so let's assign the rest of our stats here. We have let's see, we got rid of that, we got rid of that. We got a 76, 78, and 79. Doesn't totally matter how you assign these. I usually put my lowest in Constitution. I'll put the 79 here and the 78 in Strength. I don't really want to explain too much why I assign stats the way that I do. I will tell you this, in my opinion, the agility is the most important stat to me. That's not going to be the case for everyone. Each person plays differently, but I will say that agility does affect your ability to stay alive in this game in a great way. So that's assigning the stats. We're at 21 minutes. We're doing well because normally whenever I've been trying to do these videos, by the second video I have the blue sections filled out. We're going to just name this guy, well, let's see. We're going to name it Pregen. That's what I've been naming these that I've been making. And then we're going to call him Nameless Bard, or her. Actually, this is going to be a female. Sylvan Elf Bard. Now, again, these are drop-down menus that you can choose your race. And like I said, I should have said in the previous video, I'm quite sure that I did. Make sure you know before you come to the table what profession and what race you would like to be. It saves a lot of time. You have all of your optional professions are listed in here as well. So there should be 17 professions in here to choose from, which are your 6 basic professions and your 11 optionals. And that does not include Ranger of the North. That is a totally, completely different animal. And I may actually, at some point in time, do a separate spreadsheet for a Ranger of the North. We're not going to get into Rangers of the North in any of these videos here. I may do a separate video completely for Ranger of the North. It's only something I've only recently been made aware of after all of these years. And I like the Ranger of the North. I like the development for the Ranger of the North. But there's a lot of, well, there's a lot that goes into it. So I don't want to get into it in this video. As far as the level, I need to make sure that you know whatever level you are. Like sometimes you're going to play in a campaign where the game master says, we're starting at level 5 or 6 or 7. If you do that, then this level has to be right, because depending on your level, your level is going to calculate into other areas. For example, if I make that a level 7, watch this PowerPoints down here. PowerPoints is 1 per level. Make that a 7, that goes up. Some of the numbers over here change too, because you have what's called profession bonuses, which is profession. They're per level bonuses. So for a bard, you have certain points per level for everything that he does. Let's just say we make this guy a 30. Everything over here changes, because the bard is basically what you consider a jack of all trades. So he pretty much gets, I think, 1 point per level in just about everything. But definitely when you start out as a level 1, each time you level up, make sure you change your level, or you're going to hose yourself out of bonus points and bonus power points. You don't want to do that. Make sure you're keeping up with your level. Appearance roll, that's what we rolled. The actual appearance adds in the total bonus for presence. And while we're talking about bonuses, let me mention this. I didn't really go over the stats. You can just read in the book what each stat affects. I'm pretty sure in the last video I mentioned the stat bonus effect tables. You'll want to look at those, and it'll tell you what each thing affects. Biggest thing this strength effects is your carrying capacity and your hand-to-hand weapon skills. Agility is your defensive bonus. Primarily, I'm just kind of nutshelling this. Your defensive bonus and your missile weapon skills and other skills. Constitution, pretty much your hit points, and resistance to disease and poisons. Intelligence, many other skills, plus a big thing that intelligence is going to affect is the number of power points for an essence spellcaster. Intuition is going to affect the number of power points for a channeling spellcaster. And one big thing I like about intuition is perception. Perception is a big thing in the MERP system, at least when you're playing in my campaigns. There'll be a lot of perception rolls, and perception can be the difference of surprise attack or you being on the other end of a surprise attack. So presence is primarily going to affect your ability to communicate. Like it affects your appearance, of course, but it also affects a lot of influence skills and your ability to stalk and hide, among other skills as well. But that's in a nutshell, kind of give you an idea what each stat represents. These are the stat names, the stat abbreviations, the stat values, which are the roles that we did. And I will mention in my campaign, when you level up, you're going to get something called stat points per level, which is based on a grading system that I use, which takes the total value here, and then depending on where you land in the grading chart, it'll determine how many stat points per level that I allow you to have to increase your character. The reason behind that was it's a way to reward people who roll really, really, really bad stats as opposed to the people that roll really, really well. If you roll really, really well, you might only get 1 or 2 stat points per level because your stats are already really, really high depending on how you rolled. Whereas if you're really, really low and you're going out adventuring, those things are going to increase more quickly. It's like, a guy that goes into the gym. If I go into the gym and I start working out for 6 months and I'm working out next to a guy that's been working out for 20 years, you're going to notice more of a change in me because I got nothing right now. So if I start working out for 6 months, I'm going to look okay in 6 months. You'll see a change. The other guy, you might be like, he was ripped 6 months ago. I can't see any new rips, But for me, after 6 months, you might see a vast improvement, and that's just the way it is. So if somebody has really low stats as they start doing their thing in Middle Earth role playing, they're going to have more of a chance of gaining. They're going to have a chance to gain more than the guy that's already got it all. You know what I mean? There again, I'm nutshelling. So basically, what that means is, say for example, I give you, if you roll really, really bad and you have like 11 stat points per level, that means you can come up here and assign those 11 points each time you level up. This number determines what your bonus is going to be over here. What your race is determines your racial bonus. These two columns, normal bonus and racial bonus, add up to your total bonus. I have seen people in the past doing, PDF copies of a MERP character sheet or paper copies, and they're actually totaling all 3 columns. You do not total the stat value column because basically you would take this 25 defensive bonus and you would make it a 121 defensive bonus, and that's insane. Same thing with the offensive bonus. You would take your 5, or not your offensive bonus, your strength bonus. Your 5 would suddenly become an 83. Your presence would suddenly become a 105. That's not how that works. You only add your bonus columns to get to your total bonus. You don't add this. You don't add anything on this spreadsheet because everything's already calculated. But if you're filling out a piece of paper or a PDF copy of a character sheet, do not add the stat value column to the normal bonus and racial bonus to get your total bonus. It doesn't belong in the bonus column. All that number does is determines what your normal bonus is. I said appearance role and actual appearance because the presence actually adds in over here. I'm just going to make this 20 years old. And the reason I do that, the reason I keep everybody young is in my mind, the way that I think is if my character is a level one, I wouldn't want that character to be a couple thousand years old, like an elf. I wouldn't want to, an elf that was a couple thousand years old and still a level one. It's doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. There's nothing wrong with somebody that wants a 4,000-year-old elf that's a level one. That's fine. But for me, it just doesn't make sense. So for my characters, I need them to be young if they're level one. Height is going to be for the, we are going to make this a female. Let me just pop down here really quick, put in female, and when I do, please take a look up here at agility and constitution. The female actually gets a bonus to either or, but for simplicity's sake, I formulated it into this sheet that the female gets both bonuses. So for those of you who like to play male character, like you women who like to play male characters, because you think the male can survive better in combat, it doesn't work that way in MERP. You actually probably have maybe a slight edge as a female in MERP. So don't just play a guy because you think the guys are going to be, they are going to be stronger. Well, not necessarily stronger. I don't want to say stronger. They, because of their body, their weight, they will be able to carry more. They'll have more of a carrying capacity, but the actual strength value doesn't have anything to do with being a man or a woman. But I just want to mention that you do get an extra 3 points in agility and constitution. It's an optional rule in the second edition, and it applies to one or the other. But when I put this spreadsheet together, it was just a lot easier to make it both. And I don't see anything wrong with making it both anyway. The height for this Sylvan Elf is going to be, I think the average is 5'9". I'm going to make her 5'11", actually, just a little tiny bit taller. And weight, I'm going to make 141. Average weight for a Sylvan Elf female is 125, but I always like to make them just a little bit bigger. And the reason for that is that 141 will put her into the next weight category, which is going to have a potential of affecting what she, her encumbrance penalty for what she's carrying. So chances are somewhere along the line, if she's carrying just a tiny bit much, it might make a 5-point difference in a penalty applied to a moving maneuver that she might make. Nothing wrong with being a little bit, taller and a little bit heavier. It's not like she's it's not like she's overweight for an elf. 141's not bad. 5'11's not bad. She's muscular, even though she's not super duper strong. Hair color typically blonde for Sylvan elves, and blue eyes typically for Sylvan elves. You can be whatever hair color and eye color you want. Kind of. I don't make everybody stay straight by the book. I actually let a fella create a Rohirrim mage, which is a little out of the ordinary, but it's not a restricted profession. Depending on what race you are, some races may have restrictions on professions. For the Rohirrim, it says, like for restrictions on profession, I believe it says none, but Rohirrim rarely produce mages. I did allow him to be a mage. It's unusual, and he'll probably have to come up with some kind of a cool backstory to explain how he became a mage in a Rohirrim culture. But it's not, it's not like it's completely disallowed. And I'll tell you this also, while I'm even thinking about magic, although I'll probably say it again later when we get to spells and things. When you are deciding on a race and a profession, make sure it's okay with your game master to be the race and profession that you'd like to be. Some will not allow you to be certain races, or they may say you can only be a human for this particular campaign. Many game masters will not allow you to be a spellcaster at all. It just really, I understand it. It really simplifies things if there's no magic going on. I get it, but I'm not one of those guys. If you want to play a mage or an animist in one of my campaigns, I will deal with it. I personally don't like to be a spellcaster myself. Even when I was young, my brain didn't want to handle all of that. I am much older now, and believe me, my brain does not work the way it used to. I do not want to play a spellcaster myself, but I will allow it in my campaigns, and I'll deal with it. As far as demeanor, personality, motivation, and alignment, um, this can be anything you want. I'm pretty sure in the last video I mentioned somewhere, I don't know, page 22, 23, somewhere around there. If I remember correctly, there was a list of demeanors or personality traits, and you had motivations and alignments. You can pick something out of the book. Uh, you will have, sorry about that, in the racial descriptions, you will have like it'll have a small little thing about demeanors. Like for the Sylvan Elf, it says they are fun-loving but guarded folk. Outward mirth often hides their grim intentions. So I usually kind of, for me, anything that I'm playing, and again, this is going to be a pre-gen, so um, whoever wants to play it can change these. But I'm just going to kind of put calm, calm demeanor, guarded personality, blah blah, just to make it simple. Motivation. Let's just say protect the weak. Even though it's a bard, I thought of something better the other day, but I'm terrible at coming up with stuff. I really am. I have no creativity whatsoever. You should see me trying to pick out a name. Takes an ungodly. It's probably the hardest thing for me to do because the whole character creation, I get. It's in my head. I can probably almost do it without. Well, no, I can't do it without a book because I need to know the adolescence skill development chart in order to know what your each different race is. But I have most of this in my head, but I can't come up with a name to save my life half the time. And we're just going to make this good. And the rest of the blue stuff, we will. Well, actually, I will put these in. Um, this is kind of things you want to remember about your character. I do know for the elves, they have night vision, they have superb hearing. Um, they instead of sleeping, they go into a trance for 1 to 3 hours a day, which will restore their power points. Um, let's see, night vision. What else do I put up here? Plus 10 for the Sylvan Elf for versus cold attacks. That would be like melee attacks or missile attacks. So cold attacks for dwarves, it's like a plus 30 versus heat and cold. Sindar get a plus 15. Noldor get a plus 20, and half elves I believe get a plus 5, all against cold attacks. But the dwarves get versus cold and heat. The stat points per level, I won't even worry about that right now. It's probably going to be 2 to 4, but I can figure that out in between videos. And I'm actually going to cut this video right around here, and I'm right on schedule, even with doing the intro, like a whole video intro, because I got a lot of stuff out of the way doing that intro that I normally would explain as I'm going step by step here. So hopefully I didn't lose anybody, and I didn't spend too much time, I don't think, on the whole stat rolling and different optional methods. And I hope that I don't get too many dislikes for my way of thinking. But I'm a firm believer that heroic deeds are done by heroic beings, and those heroic beings do not have less than ordinary stats. In fact, they have greater than ordinary stats. So that'll be the end of part 2, and I will probably put something along the lines of blue in the description so that people will maybe I don't know. I'll probably have blue and red in there so you know which color coded section I'm actually working on here. Guess it really doesn't matter, and I probably didn't have to say that. That was an extra wasted minute. Sorry about that. I will see you in the next video, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you very much.